It is a universal experience that leaves you questioning your own judgment. You pour your time, money, and emotional energy into someone only to have them eventually turn their back on you, or worse, start whispering against you behind your back. It is a sharp, disorienting sting that makes you feel foolish for ever being kind in the first place. You find yourself replaying the memories, searching for the moment things shifted, wondering how someone you defended so fiercely could become your critic. But let me be clear, you are not naive and you are not broken. You have simply collided with a cold, uncomfortable reality of human nature that Friedrich Nietzsche identified over a century ago. The act of helping is not always a benevolent bridge that connects two people. In the wrong psychological landscape, that bridge becomes a fuse. When you go out of your way to support someone, you believe you are creating a bond of shared appreciation. You are operating from a place of empathy, logic, and care. You assume that if you pick someone up when they are down, they will naturally be drawn to your strength and want to remain in your corner. But human beings do not always operate on logic. They operate on ego, pride, and deep-seated insecurities. When you rescue someone, you are inherently changing the temperature of the relationship, and that change can be perceived as an existential threat to the other person's sense of identity. You think you are providing a ladder, but they may feel like they are being buried under the weight of your assistance. This is the hidden cost of generosity that almost nobody talks about, and it is the reason you feel so blindsided when the betrayal arrives. By constantly being the one who funds, supports, and solves, you are unintentionally, yet consistently, occupying the role of the superior party. Every time you step in to fix a disaster or offer a lifeline, you are reinforcing a dynamic where you are the capable one and they are the recipient. While you see this as a way to nurture growth, they see it as a daily, painful reminder of their own limitations. Eventually, the psychological pressure of that imbalance builds to a breaking point. They do not turn on you because you were a bad friend. They turn on you because your kindness has become the mirror that forces them to look at their own helplessness. We are going to strip away the good vibes only fluff and look directly at why this happens. We are going to look at how gratitude decays into resentment and how the very act of saving someone can trigger a defensive, even destructive response. If you have felt the sting of betrayal after being a loyal supporter, you need to understand that this is not a reflection of your failure as a person. It is a predictable, albeit painful, consequence of how the human ego struggles with debt and vulnerability. Today, we are finally going to understand why your kindness might be triggering the very betrayal you are desperately trying to prevent, and how you can change your approach to protect your peace without losing your heart. The moment you provide someone with significant help, you inadvertently initiate a psychological transaction that goes far beyond the money, time, or advice you've exchanged. You are entering the realm of the invisible debt. In a healthy relationship, there is a certain rhythm of give and take that keeps things balanced. When you step in to solve a massive problem for someone, whether you are paying their bills, mentoring them through a career crisis, or acting as their constant emotional anchor, you disrupt that rhythm. You immediately place yourself on a higher pedestal, and by default, you force them into the role of the dependent. While your intentions are purely noble, the human ego is incredibly fragile, and it reacts to this sudden shift in power with a deep, almost primal sense of unease. This unease stems from the fact that most people have an innate, desperate need to feel autonomous and capable. We all want to believe that we are the masters of our own lives. When you step in to fix their mess, you are providing a solution, but you are also inadvertently acting as a living witness to their failure. You have seen them at their absolute worst. You know they couldn't pay the rent. You know they were emotionally collapsing, and you know they were unable to navigate their own storm. For many, that awareness is agonizing. They don't want a quote-unquote savior because having a savior implies that they were incapable of saving themselves. That realization is a direct, brutal assault on their ego, and it creates a psychological tension that demands to be resolved. Because they cannot handle the feeling of being less than or beholden to you, their mind starts to play defensive tricks. They begin to view your generosity not as a gift, but as a chain. Every time you show up to help, it acts as a silent, crushing reminder of everything they couldn't achieve on their own. Instead of feeling a surge of gratitude, they feel a surge of shame. The humiliation is invisible to you, but to them, it is heavy and suffocating. They start to ask themselves, why did I need them? Why are they so much better at this than I am? This internal questioning doesn't lead to appreciation. It leads to a defensive wall of resentment. This is exactly why you often see the recipient of your help begin to pull away or grow cold. They aren't hating you for your cruelty. They are hating you for your kindness because it exposes their own perceived inadequacy. By making them feel indebted, you have stripped them of their dignity in their own eyes. To them, the only way to regain their power and level the playing field is to stop seeing you as a benefactor and start seeing you as a flaw. They will begin to nitpick your actions, question your motives, or minimize your contribution, all in a subconscious effort to knock you off that pedestal so they can stop feeling inferior. They are effectively trying to destroy the evidence of your superiority because they simply cannot live with the mirror you are holding up to them. Gratitude is often a temporary state, a fleeting emotional high that arrives the moment you provide relief. In the immediate aftermath of your help, the recipient is flooded with relief and a genuine sense of appreciation. They say thank you, they promise to never forget your kindness, and for a short window of time, the dynamic feels balanced. But gratitude has a very specific shelf life, and it rarely lasts as long as the problem you just solved. As the urgency of their situation fades and life returns to normal, the reality of the debt begins to sink in. That once bright spark of appreciation starts to dim, replaced by the heavy, persistent realization that they owe you something they likely cannot provide. This is where the psychological rot begins. The weight of an unpaid emotional or financial debt is suffocating. It acts like a phantom limb that constantly reminds them of a moment they felt small, desperate, or incapable. If they lack the means to pay you back in an equal measure, if they cannot return the favor, match your success, or balance the scales, the human ego starts to search for an escape route. Guilt is an uncomfortable emotion to carry, and most people are wired to reject guilt at all costs. Instead of sitting with that discomfort and accepting it as a part of their own life, they subconsciously look for a way to offload the burden. The easiest way to stop feeling indebted to someone is to convince yourself that the benefactor isn't actually that great. This is the moment gratitude fully transforms into resentment. They start to look for cracks in your armor. They begin to scrutinize your behavior, find flaws in your character, or magnify your mistakes, all in an attempt to justify their own shift in attitude. By convincing themselves that you are problematic, controlling, or arrogant, they effectively neutralize the debt. In their minds, if you are flawed, or if you have somehow wronged them, then they no longer owe you anything. They have successfully leveled the playing field by dragging you down to their level rather than rising up to meet yours. Ultimately, they choose to destroy the relationship not because you were a bad person, but because they are terrified of their own sense of inferiority. To stay in your orbit while feeling like a subordinate is a daily hit to their self-esteem that they simply cannot tolerate. It is far easier for them to burn the bridge, ghost you, or start an unnecessary conflict than it is to look in the mirror and acknowledge that you helped them. By creating distance or hostility, they create a false sense of independence. They aren't just pushing you away. They are running away from the version of themselves that needed you, hoping that by discarding the relationship, they can finally escape the feeling of being lesser than. The most painful realization you will ever face as a helper is that your own success can be a trigger for the very people you are trying to uplift. When you are disciplined, focused, and stable, your presence acts as a constant, unforgiving mirror. In a perfect world, that reflection would inspire them. They would look at your consistency and think, if they can do it, so can I. But in the reality of human psychology, that is rarely what happens. Instead, your mere existence becomes a sharp reminder of their own stagnation, their own missed opportunities, and their own lack of drive. They don't see your success as a roadmap. They see it as an indictment of their own failures. When you offer help from a place of stability, you are unknowingly highlighting the gap between your life and theirs. Your competence, which you intended as a gift, inadvertently creates a baseline they feel they must meet but cannot reach. For those who are not emotionally secure, this creates an agonizing sense of inadequacy. Rather than feeling motivated to improve, they feel exposed. Your discipline, which you view as a simple habit, feels like an accusation to them. They start to interpret your advice as condescension and your support as a reminder of their lesser status. You aren't just a friend anymore. You are a living, breathing metric of everything they feel they lack. This is where the concept of ressentiment takes over, a term that describes a deep, poisonous form of resentment that rots the spirit from the inside out. When people feel unable to match your strength, they don't try to rise to your level. They attempt to pull you down to theirs. It is a classic psychological defense mechanism. By devaluing your achievements, they protect their own ego from the pain of their own shortcomings. They might start whispering that you are lucky, ruthless, or arrogant, or they might try to nitpick your methods to prove that you aren't actually better than them at all. The goal is no longer to get better. The goal is to make you look worse so that they can finally breathe again. They don't want your hand up anymore because that hand is tied to a person they are starting to envy. They want to tear you down because in their mind, if they can convince themselves that you are flawed, then they don't have to face the truth of their own inaction. It is a tragic irony. The more you shine, the more some people will work to dim your light. They don't want to be helped by you. They want to see you fail so they can feel validated in their own struggle. Once you recognize this dynamic, you stop taking their betrayal personally. You realize that their hostility isn't a critique of your character. It is a desperate, pathetic attempt to reclaim a sense of self-worth by destroying the very thing that made them feel small in the first place. The most important lesson you will ever learn is that being a good person does not mean being a professional savior. There is a massive, life-altering difference between being a supportive force in someone's life and becoming their crutch. When you consistently jump in to rescue people from the consequences of their own choices, you aren't doing them a favor. You are robbing them of the very struggles that would have built their character. By constantly solving their problems, you are creating a toxic cycle of dependency. They stop looking for internal solutions because they know you are always standing in the wings, ready to provide the fix. Over time, this doesn't create loyalty. It creates a deep-seated resentment toward the person who is always there to remind them that they couldn't handle it on their own. To stop the cycle of backlash, you must stop being a savior and start being an enabler of their autonomy. True power is not found in how many fires you can put out for other people. It is found in how well you can teach others to handle their own heat. When you help, it should be about giving them the tools, the perspective, or the momentary nudge they need to cross the finish line themselves, not carrying them across it. If you find yourself doing the heavy lifting, you are doing too much. You have to be willing to let people sit in the discomfort of their own challenges, because that discomfort is where growth actually happens. If you remove every hurdle for them, you are effectively preventing them from ever developing the strength they need to actually survive. This requires you to set ironclad boundaries that you refuse to cross, regardless of how much pressure they put on you. You must stop giving without limits, and, perhaps most importantly, you must stop expecting a return on your investment. If you are giving with the secret hope that they will be grateful, worship you, or pay you back with loyalty, you are not giving, you are making a transaction, and you are setting yourself up for emotional bankruptcy. The moment you need their gratitude to feel satisfied is the moment you have lost control of your own peace. You must reach a point of emotional maturity where you offer what you can, and then you completely detach from the outcome. Whether they use your help to climb higher or ignore it entirely is no longer your burden to carry. Protecting your peace means helping in a way that leaves the recipient stronger, not more indebted. This means being honest, even when it's uncomfortable. It means saying no to the rescue missions that make you feel needed, but keep them stuck in a state of helplessness. It means encouraging them to find their own way, even when you know you could solve their problem in half the time. When you shift your role from savior to supporter, you change the dynamic of every single relationship in your life. You stop being the target of their resentment because you are no longer holding the mirror up to their dependency. You become a catalyst for their growth rather than a crutch for their weakness. And in doing so, you finally free yourself from the exhausting, thankless, and often destructive cycle of trying to save people who aren't ready to save themselves. If you want to protect your peace and stop being the target of your own generosity, you need to adopt a new, hardened approach to how you handle people. It is time to stop playing the martyr and start operating with intention. Your first rule must be to stop helping because you want to be liked or validated. When your help is motivated by a desire for social approval, you are handing people a weapon to use against you. If they don't like you later, you will feel cheated. If they do like you, you will always be performing to keep that approval. True kindness doesn't need applause. When you remove the need for liking from the equation, you stop seeking the reward and you stop feeling the sting of rejection. Second, you must kill the expectation of gratitude before it even takes root. Stop looking for a thank you. Stop waiting for them to acknowledge your sacrifice, and stop expecting them to remember what you did in their darkest hour. Most people are too wrapped up in their own egos and their own survival to even register the scale of what you've provided. When you expect gratitude, you're essentially creating an IOU in your head. When that debt goes unpaid, and it almost always will, you become bitter. Drop the expectation entirely. If they are grateful, that's a bonus. But if they aren't, your peace remains undisturbed because you never counted on it in the first place. Third, never, under any circumstances, remind them of what you've done for them. The moment you bring up your past favors, your past sacrifices, or your past financial support, the gift officially dies. It is no longer a gesture of kindness. It has morphed into a transaction. You are now a creditor, and they are your debtor, which creates an immediate, suffocating power dynamic that breeds contempt. If you find yourself needing to remind them of your kindness, it means you are looking for validation or control, not actually helping. A true gift is given and forgotten by the giver. If you have to keep a scorecard to feel like a good person, you are playing a game that will only end in heartbreak. Fourth, only provide help if you are perfectly fine receiving absolutely nothing in return. This is the ultimate litmus test for whether you should be giving at all. If you would be resentful if they ignored you, walked away, or even turned on you after you helped, then don't help. Period. Ask yourself, if I never see this person again and they never say a word to me, would I still be okay with giving this? If the answer is no, then keep your resources, your time, and your energy to yourself. Only open your hand when you are prepared for the possibility that the gift will vanish into a void. This isn't about being cynical. It is about being bulletproof. Finally, never give so much that you throw your own life off balance. You are the foundation of your own world. If you sacrifice your stability to hold up someone else's, you aren't helping. You are just creating two victims instead of one. Emotional maturity is the painful realization that not everyone is capable of carrying the level of support you are offering. Some people are simply not built to hold the weight of your kindness, and forcing it on them only creates wreckage. If you are going to be a force for good, be a smart one. Keep your boundaries locked tight, give only from your overflow, and accept the hard truth that sometimes the most profoundly generous thing you can do for someone is to step back, walk away, and let them figure it out on their own. That is how you stay powerful, and that is how you stay sane.